There's a mass exodus from the Democratic Party. There's also a new walkaway movement. And there's been a new conservative it person, Candace Owens, who's currently making waves in the Republican Party. And she says a lot of things I agree with, but only partially. And I'll explain why momentarily. Regardless, there was a viral video going around featuring a black person, quote unquote, waking up and walking away from the Democratic plantation. Take a look.
But I'm just saying, I've been researching Black Lives Matter and I've been understanding the politics and how they're funded by white liberals. And recently I've been feeling like they're white liberals in blackface because they're white liberals in blackface. When I say that, it's because the white liberals is all about feminism, LGBT. White liberals don't really care about black people.
That's correct.
I realize white liberals don't really care about me, bro.
That's correct.
I'm off the plantation, bro. I'm off the plantation, bro. I escaped the plantation, bro. They want to keep me dependent. But I'm realizing this. They put white liberal ideas, LGBT, women, non-binary, white feminism, all that Hillary Clinton stuff, put it in blackface. Because if we say it, it's going to be too crazy. So then Black Lives Matter, it started by 3 lesbian women. It started by 3 lesbian women. It's not really supporting black families. My question is, what do you think that has to say about the movement that they don't mention anything about black fathers on the website?
I'll tell you what it means.
Nothing about black fathers.
First off, if I can just say, woo, another one off the plantation. They got a problem, and this is how it starts, right? So this is how it starts. So what he said in the beginning was really interesting, is he said, originally, I liked Black Lives Matter, me too. Why would I be opposed to that? Black Lives Matter, right? Of course they matter. So you have to understand about the left. They are incredibly good when it comes to linguistics. They use euphemisms, right? Planned Parenthood. Of course I want parenthood to be planned. Oh, by the way, we're actually killing 800 black babies every single day. Eeks, you know? So this is what they do. They manipulate you by using a term that no person in their right mind would be against, right? Who would be against Planned Parenthood? Who would be against Black Lives Mattering? But the truth is, when you do a deep dive and you start to look at the finances, you're exactly right. People that are in control, Black Lives Matter is a political arm of the Democratic Party. Call them what they are. And their idea is to keep black people, as you just mentioned, enslaved and dependent via their emotion and their anger, right? So what I would say to you first off is to encourage you to keep going and to keep doing a deep dive, because that's how it started for me. Right? It was one thing that didn't make sense. It was this constant narrative being shoved down my throat. But when I deep dived on these organizations and looked at who was funding them, it never really lined up to the things that would make the black community better. You mentioned that that you realize that they don't promote straight black men, right? They never talk about the things that matter, black fathers in their home. That's because they don't want black fathers in the home. Make no mistake.
Well, okay, let's unpack this. What Candace Owens and this featured person say is true. Many people of color in particular blindly place their allegiance to the Democratic Party. And so, their vote is somewhat predictable and therefore controlled and irrelevant in many instances. And there is an illusion that they're fighting for the interests of people of color when they really aren't. Lately, black concerns are lumped into a pile of multiple other quote-unquote minority groups. And when scrutinized, we see that those other groups are seemingly more prioritized and making more progress. I've pledged long ago never to assign myself a political party. And what Candace Owens and this man is saying, well, they're not really telling you lies. However, there's this notion going around that the Conservative Party is freedom from the Democratic plantation, when it's just a different plantation. They're both mental plantations. There is no political affiliation that I can align myself with that's going to espouse everything I believe. I mean, that's common sense, but we're indoctrinated to believe otherwise and participate. The entire political system, which includes both parties, is designed to keep things exactly how they are, promoting the illusion of freedom, option, and choice in the form of controlled binary options, as the real controllers of our society do what they want to do, controlling both parties behind the curtains. This is the truth. You can take it or leave it. The entire political system is based on the Hegelian dialectic. People live their lives in mental slavery and have no idea that they are living inside many complex programs that have been designed and perfected for hundreds of years in the making. The The Hegelian dialectic is the belief system in which every thesis or issue can only be resolved through the observation of opposite, opposing ideologies. Our modern-day political system is very deliberately based on Hegelian dialectic reasoning. And in our modern political system, the powers that be keep fabricating all the issues. The issues get thrown into the political system of binary options. This system herds us onto sides and teams, and consequently, free thought is stifled, and progression is slowed down and controlled the whole way through. In our two-party system, both parties are used to achieve the same things, but it's craftily done. It's becoming increasingly important to draw lines of distinction between those who are awake and those purporting that they are awake, enlightened free thinkers. I don't care who it is. Personalities trying to pull you into politics or loving political figures on the national level sometimes operate like agents of this matrix, helping to institutionalize your mind and pull you away from your own true personal power. And I say the national level for a reason. It may be purposeful to vote and be politically active on a local level for your community. On a local level, there are many passionate people trying to do good things. I'm friends with and related to politicians doing great things. But on a national level, people are more selected than elected, and the playing field is a little different. In so many instances, we are tricked into giving our power and energy away voluntarily. And so, we don't move to action. We get herded into putting our energy and power into these controlled systems. And then we just exist. So we go through the motions. We vote, cheerlead for fake, compromised leaders. We obsess if people feel as we do or don't. We obsess if people love our political idols or if people hate them. And we sit back waiting for the world to change and for our political saviors to change it for us. If you're a fan or a hater, you have nearly zero possibility of ever thinking straight. Fans see no wrong and haters see no good. Regardless, there are no solitary political saviors or a political party who will deliver that person. It's a delusion, and we have been pacified. So guys, what you need to know, this entire political system is another form of mind control. They keep just enough things that are right on both sides of the fence to keep both sides thinking they're in the right, but they covertly pump ideology into both sides of the fence. And everyone really believes they're thinking with their own mind when they're not. Now, here's how the mind control of these plantations work. On one hand, a lot of what she says about the Democratic Party is true. She's sometimes on fire when she goes into the whole liberal setup. But then she comes around and says things like this.
America, despite what CNN may tell you, is not a racist country. 30-year-old grown man who is being paid millions cannot stomach standing for the national anthem, which is meant to honor those children who died on those beaches. To add insult to injury, that grown man is now being honored with Citizen of the Year. Colin Kaepernick, you are a coward in my book, and when the dust from the storm of ignorance settles, you will be remembered as one. Number 1, the 4th of July. Colin couldn't bear the idea of fireworks and hot dogs, so he went to Africa to find his true independence. Number 2, Thanksgiving. Because Colin couldn't stand the idea of turkey and family, he traveled to find a Native American tribe during the sunrise. Colin's protest is garbage. It's a distraction from the conversations that we should be having as a community.
Now you're in the sunken place.
Yeah, SMH. What she's doing right here is extremely dangerous. And this is what political affiliations do to people, and why I have a love-hate relationship with a lot of her opinions. She's on the money when it comes to lots of things, but when you're stuck on a political plantation, at some point, you stop using your own logic and reason. And on all these issues, now she's just repeating party talking points, and she's wrong. None of this is coming from original free thought. And this is how real enlightened thinking can see right through fake enlightened thinking. I mean, his right to peacefully protest, a real issue, by the way, even though her side of the fence is positioned to deflect it. And moreover, what he chooses to do on holidays is his right as a citizen and really none of her business or concern. It's not real free thinking, and it's not really coming from her. It's coming from the party, and it's fodder for the base she caters to. Let's talk about this. I agree with her 100% that there are a lot of race hustlers who prop themselves up, especially on the left. I also agree that we shouldn't give in to the illusion that we are victims. We are powerful, and we need to learn to live in our power, held back by nothing. But she's not saying that. She's saying there is no systemic institutionalized racism issues. It's those liberals complaining and stirring things up. This is how they keep a little of the truth on both sides and slip in agendas on both sides. Let me remind you that we actually have factual statistics that prove otherwise. We already know that America always had issues with racial injustice, and many things are still in existence today. You can deny it if it makes you feel good or makes you popular like her, but it is what it is. From profiling to increased incarcerations to the growing number of unarmed executions of people of color. It's a real social issue, and it's not supposed to be an issue where the left says it's true and the right says it's not. In addition to hordes of civilian protesters and police officers like Michael A. Wood Jr., let's listen to a few more police officers talk about this very real issue.
You might not see nothing. You're supposed to be visible. You might not see anything, but you go hunting, like bounty hunting for an arrest. Locking up some old guy, some homeless guy, finding somebody who's riding a bicycle on the sidewalk, who's spitting, and you bring him in.
The problem is when you go hunting, when you put any type of numbers on a police officer to perform, we are going to go to the most vulnerable. If we start doing what we're doing in Midtown Manhattan, a phone call to the mayor's office is going to be made. That's going to be the end of it.
We're the predators, they're the prey. The worst thing you can have is a police officer that needs an arrest for the month.
So you're all minorities. How does that make you feel?
It's horrible.
This is something coming from the top that trickles its way down, and this is why we're all here today.
Now here's the mind game. To contend with these issues and fix them, well, that requires an acknowledgement of the issues. But if the system devises ways to keep you from even acknowledging the issues, like what Candace Owens is being used to do, quite obviously there will be no fixing the issues, which is exactly what they want. And there are probably people several levels above her laughing at her and continue on controlling the board game because they know there are institutionalized racial issues, but they'll pat her on the head just the same. She's fresh and useful to the system. So you see how this left-right thing works sometimes? On one side, you have people marching and protesting. Then you have another team on the ground level, denying the problems even exist, keeping the people fighting each other. And then there is no change. And just so it doesn't look ugly or come off one-sided or racist,
Put it in blackface.
in the Hegelian dialectic, these things are strategically designed to keep all the agendas from on high hidden and to keep we, the common people, always fighting with each other. Let me give a little history refresher and show you how these political parties work. The powers that be have agendas that they want to pull off, and so they use the political parties and the media to hide their agendas. And so many talking heads either lie on purpose to hide the agendas, and many innocently actually believe the rhetoric. Let's talk drug laws, for example. Drug laws weren't made for the welfare of the people. drug laws were begat out of racism. This is a fact. And the first wave of drug laws were made to attack Chinese immigrants. And then they organized new drug laws to attack blacks and other groups. Even as recent as the 1960s and 70s, President Nixon and people in his administration admitted off record that the war on drugs was meant to attack black people. Again, documented fact. And these are things that are known. And the drug war was revitalized again in the 1980s with the crack cocaine explosion. And the entire time this is going on, political parties and the media were used to keep people from really understanding what was going on. And the real reason why law enforcement incorporated going after drugs so heavily in their daily operations. Daily operations that we are now living through to this very day. The over-policing of our society, and primarily communities of color, was a deliberate agenda coming from long ago. And the illusion of these warring political parties is just more distraction from how the system is set up to work, regardless who is in power. So, either with willful ignorance or your awareness, immersing yourself in the political landscape, you can evolve yourself into becoming an agent of change, or just an agent.
Ignorance is bliss.
Then we have a deal.
For another example, I know personally many people who are active in the Native American communities. And this is another oppressed group that you can't deny. And historically here, it's always been this way. They're having many of their rights violated. They're being attacked and over-policed and mistreated. They're even having their lands snatched away and given over to the oil companies, and the list goes on and on. But they deal with different oppressed groups with different tactics. For them, it's all about just keeping all of this out of focus and keeping you distracted, out of sight, out of mind. So, when you let a system designed to fool you, and you ignore or stop listening to the plight of other people, and you start adopting cookie-cutter belief sets from groups, that's when you're failing as a human being. Now here's what might not be common knowledge. The current landscape that we see today, with all this confusion and the truth deliberately being put on both sides and on all teams and ideologies, was done by design through many COINTELPRO programs that most people don't even know exist. There's something very important about the 1960s, and they're probably not going to tell you any of this in history books. A lot of people started to wake up, and consequently, a lot of the agendas that the establishment had in place began to fall apart. That's also why the civil rights movement gained so much ground. There was a sort of cultural revolution. People were beginning to look at things through a moral lens. And a lot of the institutionalized racism began to look dated, idiotic, and evil. And people noticed it internationally across racial lines. And that's why people were coming together. This mass waking up affected all things. It affected music and the art scene. And it was crippling a lot of the agendas that the powers that be wanted to put through, like war. There was so much anti-war fervor coming out of the 60s and 70s. This bombing and killing of children all over the world. People were waking up to their humanity. Black resistance and the civil rights movement initiatives were taking hold. Anti-war sentiments were growing. Peace and love was promoted. And the psychopaths in power were losing major ground. Well, they sure fixed that. Since then, many COINTELPRO programs have been implemented to combat all of this and this mass waking up. That's why there is so much confusion. They worked on this. There's an agenda that they're going to stick to that they'll never be honest about in public. That's why they had to reset the board game. That's why you see the growing articulation of racism and xenophobia and many, many psychotic things. The moral arguments have to be suppressed with confusion and the very strategic and deliberate blurring of lines and combining of half-truths so that people who are morally and ethically wrong can articulate themselves to sound right. This is what we're living through. And so now you better believe that all these teams and groups and your political affiliations are covertly controlled from on high and play into all of this. So in this age of socially engineered division and confusion, on one side of the fence, you have liberal platforms that want you riled up about race issues. They act concerned about it, but you're lulled into their groups that are funded and controlled from on high. There is no real change or revolution, and things don't go further or beyond anything they're not comfortable with. These groups are under control. And while people are made to believe that their interests are being fought for, people also get indoctrinated with all these other isms and schisms that they want to push to change the social values of the people. But on the right, you have a different game entirely. Many conservative platforms want you to believe, hey, there is no racial injustice issues or oppression. All that's just liberal schemes and tricks. We're all Americans and nothing's wrong. When of course, that's delusional and disingenuous. It's strategically designed to make people put their defenses down, and it keeps people warring against each other so that no human rights issues ever get resolved. The people will be fighting each other on the ground level because you have one side controlling the revolution and you have another side convincing people the issues don't even exist and everything stays the same. And this is why people need to be wary of too much overzealous allegiance to political affiliations, because they stop you from free critical thinking. And at some point, it becomes an identity you're adopting. A lot of these groups that you see, including political parties, have beliefs and ideologies that speak to us, that resonate with us. And so we gravitate to them emotionally. But at some point on a subconscious level, we allow these groups, organizations, and political affiliations to complete our thought processes for us. And before many people even realize it, become victims of groupthink reasoning. These things are designed to keep us on teams going at each other so that we never come together on the things that unite us and the things that we all agree on, whether we even like each other or not. If you comb through social media in today's climate, you will see two completely different narratives on the same topic. That is not normal. We're sectioning ourselves off into these groups, and we no longer even agree on facts anymore. We have blue and red media, both very disingenuous, keeping this whole thing in play. Instead of respecting the truth, we just go with the spin of the story that supports our already decided belief system. Let's take the Kaepernick situation, since Owen seems obsessed with it. We keep hearing that story spun two different ways, and the two sides are never listening to each other. On the liberal side, they keep celebrating him as a hero, telling you what awards he's won, telling us who's racist and who's against him and all this other stuff. But he did what he did for a reason, and we don't realize that they keep making it all about him. And on the right, they just keep lying and trying to frame the opposite narrative, avoiding real conversation and insisting that it's disrespecting the flag and our country's servicemen, even though we know that that isn't true. And it's been explained over and over that Kaepernick even decided to change from sitting down to kneeling in respect for the military, after a very respectful interaction with a veteran who took the time to hear what he had to say. This should have been the end of it. But no, right-wing media doesn't want anyone to think, reason, or listen. Its job is to shoot down and criticize any semblance of protest against the establishment. And again, they too make it all about Kaepernick, but in the other direction. So in the end, both forms of media making it all about Kaepernick, with neither types of media putting focus on the reason Kaepernick and the athletes are kneeling for. Both media keeping us from the point. Let's look at another topic, gun control. Hardly anyone has an uncontaminated thought about gun control. I was never on board with more gun control, and we should definitely protect our Second Amendment rights. And if you know history, you'd see that the powers that be were always trying to formulate ways to take away guns. And it had nothing to do with safety, and everything to do with the fact that they don't want an armed society. The very first gun control laws were designed to take away guns from blacks. This was part of something called the Black Codes, true fact. And then eventually they decided, you know what? We don't want anybody to have guns. And so many types of gun control were attempted and promoted as the right thing to do at different points in history. One of the reasons the Second Amendment was implemented was because governments don't want armed societies. They want concentrated power, and they want you to trust them to keep everyone safe. On this issue, we see a flip-flop, and it's now the liberals that want you to do what the government wants. And because of the inundation of all these mass shootings being pumped in the media, there's an immediate emotional reaction. Now, when thrown into the Hegelian dialectic political reasoning mechanisms, liberal media primarily pumps out one media-guided solution: gun control. Restrict access to guns. And the right's response? More guns, armed teachers, and more responsible adults. In truth, the real solution is probably not these two opposite opinions. Take away guns, more guns. Instead of liberal media constantly pushing for gun control, dispatching fake heroes to cry for gun control as if that's the end-all be-all solution, and instead propose to have these mass shootings properly investigated so that we know and understand who's doing the shootings, what groups they're affiliated with, what are their belief sets and ideologies, and what are the common denominators with all these mass shootings. And lots of times when the media tells us they don't know what the motive is, oh yeah, they're lying. Furthermore, if lots of people suddenly started crashing cars into buildings, you don't ban cars. You investigate the social phenomenon and investigate the common denominators in all the occurrences and take it from there. And when you figure out why these things keep happening and why they're pushed front and center in the news cycles and evolve your way of thinking, you might start thinking about the whole debate a lot differently. No one is really thinking freely. On these political plantations, both of them, they keep giving us the issues to worry about and guiding our minds the entire way on what the solutions for them are. And it is time to walk away from all of this. So this walking away initiative shows how your mind can get paraded onto another plantation. It's not about the good side versus the bad side. It's about keeping people under control in different schools of thought. So on one hand, you have this new wave of conservatives calling out the racism from the left. But on the other, they're brainwashing, ridiculing, discrediting, and disavowing legitimate concerns and issues. Again, the confusion and putting truth and agendas on both sides is by strategic design. People are not aware and they're falling right in. Through many mechanisms, including talking heads and celebrities, they've scrambled people's brain to the point where they made it seem like something honorable to talk against your own people or group because it's now viewed as something noble and honorable, and it's intellectual free thinking when no, it's not. It could be, and sometimes it is, but not in the cases that they're showing you, furthering political agendas. It's almost the exact opposite. Talking against your group is honorable and courageous when you stand in truth, not political propaganda. Speaking against your own marginalized group is now being glamorized as free thinking. But when you deep dive into the rhetoric, you see easily that it's not. It's just what people from above want because they don't want a repeat of the 60s, where people find strength and solidarity in numbers. It's all a part of your conditioning. Snap out of it. I believe in a lot of people who I believe have very good intentions. They're good people who are going to do good things, and they happen to be members of both parties. So I say all this not to discourage people from listening to or dealing with people who are coming from either party. But more people should know how these parties work in the grand scheme of things. So when you see all this rhetoric about walking away from the Democratic Party, well, a lot of it is true. But to me, it's reminiscent of a Coke versus Pepsi debate, with people insisting Pepsi is better and Coke people defending Coke, when I know soda isn't good for you, period. Don't become infected by other entities guiding your thoughts and consequently lowering your vibration. You can be active, but it doesn't have to mean swearing your allegiance to any of these plantations. For everyone, your allegiance should be first and foremost with the truth. So it's more than time to not just walk away, but walk away and wake up.